So you'll see a little recording button at the top. Do you guys see that? Is it recording? Good. All right. So Andrew, I see. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Nice to see you.
Yes.
Marcus. So I see Marcus is here. Not yet. Alexis Mendoza. Where do I see? Yep, there you are.
I'm here.
There you are. Marshall. I feel like Marshall came in. There you are, Marshall. Alexa. I feel like there you are.
Yeah. Hello.
Alana.
Hello.
So Alana, last week I didn't record because I just didn't think of it, to be honest with you. So I'm going to be posting some things for you guys to grab another hour here or there. So don't worry about last week. I'm going to be going over a couple more things this week anyway with everybody. Maria, I feel like I saw Maria. There she is. And Olivia, how are you, sweetie? All right. You're good. Olivia, can you hear me?
I'll text her.
Is she on mute? I don't think so. Yeah, I know that she was having some difficulties, so I just want to make sure she's all right. And did Marcus
I'll
get in?
text her.
All right, thanks, Marshall. All right, so no Marcus. And Chris, he told me he was not going to be able to make it. Okay. All right. So I had another meeting. How many meetings do I need? But apparently a lot. So I had another meeting on Friday, and we were given yet another handbook. So I was like, okay, let me look through this one now. Not much different, except for the fact that I think they're feeling like they want all the clinical experience students to have the same type of experience. So we're going to be doing some things over here, like, you know, through this class time. And then I'm going to be doing what I told you guys last time, but I'm also going to be offering it to some of the other students as well, just so they too can have an experience, interview live people, stuff like the things that I told you that I really wanted to do with you last week. I think they were feeling like, well, if not all the clinical experience students had that opportunity because of my position and my role, then they kind of didn't want us to go in that direction. But I said to them, listen, I'll get everybody an interview somewhere. I'll get, you know, like at least let them have something, because, you know, I do have access to all these different, you know, resources right now. So we might as well use them. So we're going to kind of combine, but regardless, you guys will get your time in, you'll get what you need. To make some clarifications, I do need this from everybody. Oh. Did you guys see this? First of all, this is the most updated handbook. Do you guys have this color handbook? Yes? Okay. Did you, and it's also in Word. If anybody needs it in Word, I have a copy of it in Word if you need that too. And then this contract is in the appendices of that handbook. Did you guys see this? I need this assigned copy from you guys on here. So we both kind of sign it and agree. You have your name at the top and your signature. I put my name. Then we initial down the bottom here. So if you guys get that into me, you could submit it, take a picture of it if you want. I'll print it out and then I'll sign it too, and then just keep it on file. But
And what was it?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the name of it?
Yeah.
It's the contract. It's just, there is
Okay.
page numbers, but it's Health and Physical Education Clinical Handbook. And then right out, it says fall 2020, and right after it's student name, print, signature, HB, supportive supervisor, print, signature, department contract for teacher candidates, health and physical education.
I think it's page 27 on the handbook that I have, at least.
Does it say page 27, or did you count 27 pages? Because I don't see any
The
pages.
like PDF like has them on the side, like the pages.
I should do
So it
that.
just said 27 on the side for me.
Yeah, okay. Well, then it's page 27, because I'm usually like 1, 2, 3. And then, yeah. The other thing was we were kind of going back and forth between the lesson plan. Do you remember that last week? We were having that discussion about what was required of a lesson plan, all that stuff that we were kind of going over and talking about. And that contract is a good 2 pages, just so you guys know.
Yeah, it's 27, 28.
Yeah, 27, 28. There you go.
No, I feel like this is a dumb question, but like, so what are we physically signing this, dropping it off in your office, doing PDF?
So if you sign it and you can either attach it as a PDF, you can take a picture of it and I'll print it out and then I'll sign it and initial it and keep it for my copies.
Okay.
Okay. So just email it to me. However you can do it. If you want to download it and then upload it as a PDF, if you want to just take a picture of it, if that's easier for you, whatever, I can print it out however.
Fine.
All right. All right. So we had talked about, so let me bring it up on that page. A lesson plan and reflection for elementary and a lesson plan and reflection for secondary. So basically, what we're looking at with this is we are trying to get you guys the opportunity to teach in front of somebody or something. So I feel like I can get you guys some students to teach in front of. I feel like I can even get some of the other students some kids to teach in front of. But if not, they're saying, you know, if you teach in front of family members, just trying to get enough people on. So for you guys, looking at this now, we would be starting with an elementary lesson plan. So you guys just have to start thinking about something that you would want to teach to a group of students. Now I can do, because secondary, they are letting us start at 6th grade. So for you guys, I can get you both done at my school. I don't have to try to find another placement for you to do that. Marshall, did you get any information about Mantua?
So I did talk to the school that I work at. I talked to that phys ed teacher.
Yeah.
The school I'm in's 1st through 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
He said I could do it whenever, however.
Okay.
He said if it's one less thing he's got to do, that's fine.
Okay.
Did you say secondary starts at 6th grade?
Yeah.
Okay, so could I do it at the other school
Yeah.
in
Sure.
district? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have contacts, you know, you don't have to be placed anywhere, but if you have contacts and that you want to use them, absolutely. I just
Okay.
need to be able to watch it. So you have
Okay,
to
that
make
was my other
sure,
question.
yeah, you have to make sure that you can record it and I can
Okay.
watch it, or I can be invited to that virtual session. So whatever the school policy or whatever they say is fine with me. I just need to be able to watch it in order to observe you.
Okay.
Okay, so what I really want you guys thinking about basically is, you know, what are some of the topics that you would think about starting to teach in an elementary setting? And then what we'll do next week when we meet is start to kind of zero in down a little bit about the standard that you're picking. We'll pull it up, we'll, you know, make sure. But if during the week you can email me 3 topics that you think that you could do an elementary lesson on for physical education and or health, then let me know what those topics are. Okay, so that email really should come to me no later than Monday. I don't have the date in front of me, but does anyone have the date in front of them? Hold on, let me pull that up.
I think it's the 28th.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it is the 28th. Yep. So it's the 28th. So by Monday night, if you can get that, that gives me Tuesday to try to pull up all those standards and stuff that goes with the topics that you're interested in. And then when we meet next Wednesday night, then we'll really zero down and start looking at the lesson plan template and making sure you don't have any questions and that you guys feel comfortable about what's expected. And then we'll start to schedule some of those interviews and we'll start to then determine, you know, depending on how we look at the lessons and what that looks like as far as kind of planning maybe even a unit depending on what the interests are. Then I'll start giving you some dates that we can start to prepare for, because really all of a sudden the middle of October is going to hit and it's going to be like, oh, now we're in secondary. So we want to get that done sooner rather than later. All right. Any questions on that? You're good? Okay. So tonight I want you guys to be able to log an hour, and then I'm also going to email you. I really tried hard to set up the Google Classroom, which I think would be fantastic for everybody to be able to just go in and drop in work and stuff. But as Marshall knows, I'm blocked. So my school isn't allowing, the way it's set up, because it's education, isn't allowing outside people from Winona to join a Google Classroom. When I try to do it from my account, it's not, Rowan's not allowing me to add you guys to your account. So we either do it through non-Rowan accounts and Gmail accounts, or I've been really trying to set up the Canvas to try to use that in a similar way. But I have yet to get my courses on my Canvas. So I've asked 3 times now. I'm going to ask one more time, and hopefully by next week, I'll have that shell set up for you guys, and you'll be able to drop things in there and pick things up. But until then, we're just going to do things through email right now, just because I don't need to drop too many things for you right now. So after this session is over, I'm going to email you a professional development that my guidance counselor did, because tonight we're going to be talking about SEL, which is social emotional learning. It's something that's required in all the districts right now with coming back from the pandemic. It's something that's being pushed huge. It's been pushed before. SEL standards are not anything new, but the mandates of it being part of basically every day of a student in our return, remote or non-remote, is essential right now. And who are they giving it to? Guidance counselors and health and phys ed teachers. That's who they're giving this to get through to all of the kids. So if you're in a high school right now, I know my daughter, she's a 10th grader. She is in driver's ed. They haven't even touched driver's ed. All of her classes are on social emotional learning right now. So this is something that can definitely be a topic that you guys decide if you wanted to teach it on. You know, especially if you're going to do something elementary, you want to make sure it's age appropriate. And, but it's just another thing that as a health and phys ed teacher, it would be your responsibility to be able to do this and to talk about it. So I'm going to go over the SEL, what it is, what it stands for, what the objectives are, show a few little videos. And then at the end, I will email all of you the professional development. It's 50 minutes long that my guidance counselor did with all of us. Watch all of it. And then I want you to write just a 1-paragraph summary of what she discussed and what she talked about and submit it to me. And then I will give you the hours for that. So you would just log that in as an hour and be able to, you know, keep that for your records. All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. I've got like 25 screens up right now. Okay, so can you guys see what I'm looking at right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start at the top. And I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller over here. So right now, do you guys see, I'm always interested to see what everybody sees. Are you guys seeing 2 screens, like one that says optional video activity and one that says over here? Or are you just seeing this screen that says competencies for school, work, and life?
Just the one screen.
Oh, interesting. So I've been working on split screens, which is really something that you guys, if you're Zooming, would maybe like to do. Do you guys know how to do the split screen for Zoom? So split screen for Zoom is I'm able to have, I would like to get rid of this, but so
Competencies for school, work, and life. Introduction to social and emotional learning.
Hold on. We're going to try again. I'm not going to have them do it for you. I'm just going to show you these slides, so it's not going to look perfect for you right now. But in a split screen, what you guys see, and I'll share with you again, is half of your screen would be just you guys, and the other half, if you just pull it out, and I'll be able to show this to you at a different time, then you're able to have your kids over here on your computer screen, and over here, it could be something that you're either reading or you're following along with that they don't see. So it's kind of helpful, even if they want you to do, like if you want to do an assessment with kids that are online, you can have them pull up the assessment, split screen it, and you can have the kids on this side, you know what I mean, where you're watching them, but they also are on Zoom taking the assessment in front of you, but they're also taking the assessment on a split screen next to them. So it just kind of gives you more options that way. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to really make this, hold on. I really want to get rid of this, but I can't unless I make it this whole thing, and I don't want him to talk. I want to talk for him. All right, here we go. So we're just going to make this work. Competencies for school, work, life. I'm going to share this with you guys so you'll be able to hear it and see it and do whatever you need to do with it. But like I said, I'm not going to sit here and have them read everything to you. So in here, what you guys are basically going to know by the end are really the first three, and they're the only first three that we're going to be looking at. Andrew was in my class last semester, so he knows that I'm huge on social emotional, and he knows that I'm huge on trauma and understanding where kids are coming from. I made them, if you remember, I made you guys watch, do you remember the name of the movie, Andrew?
Yeah, was it the Aces movie or something?
Yeah, do you remember
was,
the name of it?
I want to say something with like paper.
Yeah, Paper Tigers.
Paper
So
tag, yes.
Paper Tigers, if you ever want to really get into the head of students who are really going through a lot, understanding Paper Tigers, watching it, and we would watch like 10 minutes at the beginning of each show or each class, and it just kind of gives you a perspective of where kids are really coming from. So I'm going to show you this video here. You can tell me if you guys can
Imagine
see
the
it.
places we'll go.
Let me just stop
Together.
this share.
Expedia.
Is the video we're doing the summary on?
No.
As we reopen, don't you want your pocket of America to still
Oh.
feel like its own? Where places with the best
Here we go.
barbecue, or where you
Can you guys see the video here? So if we think about that for just 1 second, what is the point of that video? What would be the point of understanding all of that?
Everyone's got a life outside of, school, and we don't know each other's stories.
Yeah. And knowing what those little words were coming up around them, how did it make you feel or think about that person? Understanding where they were coming from.
I looked at it like just because I noticed it the other day, like teachers pressuring students, like if they forget to do something or just being responsible about something and like they forget and like teachers are frustrated, but there's still something still going on at home or who knows what's going on. And it's like they forget that part.
Yeah. So it's really the word we're looking for is empathy, understanding what other people are going through, or taking a step back to say, okay, well, wait a second, maybe there's something else happening here. It's not just this one student who feels like being defiant every single day. Or maybe if you want to look at it from another perspective, this teacher who's on me every day could be like in this video here, is getting pressured from their administrator to be on top of it and to get better test scores and things. And now that pressure is getting to them. I think this is a really good time. And this is why the state has mandated the SEL training, because think about how many people have lost their jobs during SEL. How many people, the biggest concern with kids being home right now is that teachers and people at school, we can't see them every day to know exactly what's going on. So when kids come in and they are abused or they have some things that, are sending up some red flags, our job as teachers and as educators is to report those things and to be on top of it and to let people know what's happening so they can get the help they need. When we don't see kids for 6 months, that was the scariest part about it, not knowing what was going on with some of our kids. And a lot of these kids, a lot of kids, like we started some outdoor fall sports, but nobody has any idea what the winter sports are going to bring. And think about our seniors who are depending on scholarships for basketball or some wrestling or some sort of winter sport that doesn't even know if they're going to be able to play that sport in a few months. So the pressure is starting to, even though we're back in school, whether it's remotely or in person, that pressure has not gone away. So all of those things are really important. And that's why health and phys ed teachers are really being pushed to go over this as much as they can in their classes. So let me just go back to our, all right. So SEL, here are the things that you need to know about SEL. I'm not going to quiz you on all of them, but this is what really, when you're talking about SEL, these are the 4 main objectives. And you see here, feel and show empathy for others. So that's huge in understanding and knowing, where we are and what we're doing with our SEL standards, setting and achieve positive goals, managing emotions, and making responsible choices. So when you talk about SEL, that's really the the whole process of it. So if you were thinking about doing a lesson plan or a unit plan on SEL, these are 4 really great objectives that you can pull from. Here are the 5 core social and emotional competencies. That's what they're called. How many of you, let me go to grid here. How many of you already know about social and emotional competencies, that you're aware of this term already? Not yet, kind of. So here are the ones that you need to be aware of: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. So think about as a health teacher. So Andrew, you were just in my class. Did we or did we not probably touch on every single one of those in a health lesson that people were doing throughout the semester? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so as a health and phys ed teacher, you are going, it's inevitable. That's why it's in your court right now, as far as SEL standards go, to cover these things, because it's inevitable. You're already supposed to be teaching about them, but now it's about bringing them home and really making sure that this is almost part of their daily activities. So every day now, my guidance counselor, she does some sort of announcement that introduces another piece of social emotional, and then my phys ed teacher is kind of reiterating it in his classes, just so we can keep this on a daily check-in. When you're looking at the difference of competency and sub-competency, so SEL, remember we talked about the overall process of it. Competency were the 5 competencies that I just went over with you. So it was about the self-awareness and the self-management and those 5 that we did. The sub-competencies are about specific knowledge, attitudes that contribute to a competency. So when we look at it, sub-competencies, you can see here, serve as building blocks for others. So all of these competencies really depends, and this is where age appropriateness comes into play and everything else. But really, it's the building blocks. So those sub-competencies are even more important than the process and everything else. We can talk, you guys can look through this, but the context, again, I'm not quizzing you on this, I'm just giving you information. So I'm not gonna, make you remember all of these things, but it just helps you, give you kind of a background to it. Culture, characteristic of a student, environment in which the student is situated. So culture is huge. Depending on where you go and what school you're in, culture plays a huge role in how you're going to be able to give any type of lesson, specifically one that's dealing with self-management, self-awareness, and things like that, where in some cultures that's huge, in other cultures they're it's something that they haven't really embraced or moved forward with it, depending on the culture of the school, the culture of the community. So culture is huge when you talk about understanding how to teach certain things. This just talks about multiple ways to express social emotional competencies. You can do it through hands-on activity, you can do it through lecture, you can do it through videos, all these different ways that you can kind of express to people and show them how they can kind of embrace it in their classrooms. In here, I'm huge on what's called response to intervention. So response to intervention, there's 3 types, and this isn't the first time we'll talk about response to intervention, because we're going to have a class, and Andrew will know too, I talk a lot about special education, because that's huge for you guys too. We talk about adaptive physical education, you talk about your health classes, your physical education classes, oftentimes everyone's included. So if you're in a math class or a language arts class, there's oftentimes, and I'm sure Marshall, you can attest to this if you've seen it in schools and stuff, that some of our special education students will be pulled out into a different classroom, and those teachers don't have to accommodate for them, or their inclusion, and they're high functioning, they can keep up, they just need a little bit of an assistant or something like that. In physical education and in health, no rules to that game. Everyone's in your class and you got to figure it out. So understanding response to intervention, or the 3 tiers, is really an important piece of teaching as well. So the first tier is what's called a universal tier. It's basically your classroom management. It's this is going to work for everybody. We got this. I understand that if I teach it to them in this format, 80% of my kids are going to get it. Tier 2 is there's probably maybe about 5 to 6 kids that aren't going to get it the way that I'm teaching it, and I'm going to have to take a step back, and I'm going to have to think of another way to teach them. So let's just take a throwing class. You're going to teach them how to appropriately catch and throw, and the first lesson is throwing, and 80% of the kids, the way that you taught it, got it. They're over here, they're throwing, they're doing a great job. And there's like 10 kids that you're like, okay, they cannot get that hand-eye coordination down. Every time they step with the same foot. They're doing everything exactly the same. So you're going to have to think of another way to do it. So what's another way, another tier? And let's keep social emotional in mind. So not a good answer would be, I am like, come on, let's go. What are you doing? Why can't you keep up? Like, that's never going to work, especially if they're coming in with, listen, I just heard last night that my mom is gravely sick and she's going in the hospital with something that's called trauma, whether it's one-time event or repeated event. A family member comes home drunk over and over and over again. That's called repeated events, which can cause trauma in the brain. And we can talk about the neuroscience of it, but it basically hijacks your brain. So it's something as simple as step and throw. All of a sudden your brain is like, what are you talking about? I can't do it. So just shout it out to me. What would be another intervention that you could do, say, with those 10 kids, if 80% of your kids, like 20 of them, have the step and throw down? What do you think? Shout it out.
Could we isolate those 10 and have them keep working on it and have the other students go further along in the progression?
You could. Yep. You absolutely could, depending on the staffing that's in the room, depending on who's doing supervision. Any other suggestions?
Wouldn't you have to like be careful with that though? Because like some kids might realize what's going on, like they need more work. So like that could cause some bigger issues.
It
behavior.
could. So you have to know your population. You have to know who you're working with. Younger kids usually like the attention. And if we're doing a step and throw, they probably aren't going to feel pulled out like a 10 or 11-year-old is going to feel. They start to notice socially what's happening around them and that they can't do things, and they start to feel awkward and weird, and then they could have a bad reaction to that. Usually if you're going to start with step and throw, we're starting pretty young. Those kids are just going to be like, oh yeah, I'll go with you. Like they like the attention. But again, let's think about the staffing in the room. If you're the only person, how are you isolating 10 kids and 20 kids in a different place, or not really keeping your eye on the majority of the class, and you've got 10 kids that still need some extra help? So what's another thing we could do?
I would probably just modify the activity where the kids that already have the activity down. So like if they already have the step and throw down, I would probably have them, all right, so now that your next step would to be a target. So like the waist and above, I guess at their age level is where you want to keep it, because the ball's probably going everywhere at their age level.
Yeah.
While you're still working with the other kids, you still have the same activity. They're still doing the same thing. Now you just have a target involved. So that's personally what I would do.
That's excellent. So what you kind of did was you kept the kids that were 80% and you kind of advanced them. You know what I mean? Where you're still kind of doing the same thing with the kids on the tier 1. So you kind of did the opposite, which is still a great strategy.
I'll get bored, I feel like, if.
Yeah, no, you're
It's-
absolutely right. You have to think of the next level and what's something else you can do. And it's
Right.
very motivating because of the fact that they're feeling good about themselves, right? They're
They have
climbing.
a high too, so.
Yeah. So to give you a social emotional tier 2 in an environment like that, I would say what you could do is the kids that are getting it all of a sudden you can have a partner activity. Everybody grab a partner and you put somebody who's getting it with someone who may need a little bit more practice. Not only does it give the person who's not getting it that feeling of inclusion, but it also gives them that social support from a peer. And it also gives the peer who's helping them that that social emotional of he's doing something or she's doing something good for somebody else. But as a teacher, you have to make sure that you don't have the kids in there being like, you suck, you know what I mean? Like you've got you got to be careful for those kids too. But that's an example of like a tier 1, and then using a social emotional, that self-awareness, that self-management, those things, and bringing it into a tier 2. So taking what you're doing in your own classroom, but including the SEL in there. Tier 3 most likely is going to be that building connections with those specific kids, maybe having them stay after with you, building a bond with them, encouraging them, forming their own little group or something like that, having them be your special group at recess time where you're working on something with them. So it's all about positive connections with kids as well. But they were great answers. Good job. We're going to skip that one, importance of SEL. So again, we just talked about this, the importance or why SEL is important. It's to recognize strengths and assets. So you always want to be lifting these kids up, building respectful dialogues like we just talked about, the resolving conflict peacefully. One of your positions inevitably as a phys ed and health teacher is going to be supervision during lunchtime. It's inevitable. Usually we get a duty, we get lunch duty, a lot of specialists do. So if not every teacher in the building does. And if you go into lunch duty with the mindset of like, this is awful, I don't feel like doing this, it smells like syrup in here, whatever you're thinking in your head, right? It's going to turn out that way. Lunch duty actually ended up and still is to this day my favorite time of day, because of the fact that kids are finally in an environment that they can just chill out, be themselves. And if you really, really listen to their conversations, you have so many opportunities to connect with them and follow up with them the next day and make those connections. When you're outside, inevitably, they're going to get into conflict. They're fighting over who was out in Foursquare, or who's doing whatever. And if that's the case, trying to facilitate conflict resolution in a peaceful way is key for you guys during that situation. And really doing a lesson on conflict resolution and then being able to carry out that lesson right live in a live situation is more instrumental than you'll ever know. So understanding that is really an important piece to your position as well. So we are not going, you can read all of this stuff too. It just talks about, you know, the, oops, let me let, someone got kicked out. Alexis did, back in. So understanding, hi, how are you?
Fuck.
So understanding here is just being like, you know, increase the likelihood of understanding your positive attitudes, positive behaviors, and you guys know about all of this stuff. So I'm not going to go through all of that with you right now. You know, this again, a lot to do with adulthood. I do want to show you the neuroscience that goes with this. So if you just wait 1 second, let me come over here, move you guys out of the way. Nope. Nope. Hold on. Okay. Let me move you guys over here for 1 second and bring you back up and show you this last one here. And then I'll share my screen with you. Just find that slide. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Come over here. 1 second.
Thank you all very, very much. It really is just a delight to be here and an honor to be
We're not going to watch the
considered
whole
a
thing.
part of this amazing collaborative, which I have been a champion and fan of from afar, and it's just great to be here and in a very short amount of time share with you what has been some absolutely amazing work that has been going on in neuroscience and its relevance to social and emotional education. And if there's one take-home message that I'd like you to walk away with from my presentation today, it's that social emotional learning changes the brain. And the brain is really the organ that is the target of these interventions. So this is a very ambitious outline of what I hope to cover. I'm going to tell you a snippet about neuroplasticity, the idea that the brain is the organ that's built to change in response to experience. I'll then tell you a little bit about what we know about one of the key attributes which is shaped by social and emotional learning, which is a child's capacity to regulate her or his emotions. And finally, I'm going to conclude by suggesting that we can change the brain by training the mind through social and emotional learning. We know that environmental factors influence and shape the brain. We know that the emotional environment in early life in particular is absolutely central in shaping the circuits of the brain in ways that persist throughout an organism's entire adult lifespan. The brains of children are constantly being shaped. They're literally being molded by experience, both of a negative and positive sort, both wittingly and unwittingly. And I think our task must be to take the reins and to promote positive brain changes, and one of the central vehicles is through social and emotional learning. One of the things I tell my students is that behavioral interventions are biological. That is, if you do something to intervene in a way that changes behavior, it's got to be the case that you're changing the brain. There's no other way that we know for behavior to change other than through its change in the brain. And in fact, there's every reason to think that behavioral interventions can produce more specific brain changes than any, quote, biological intervention like a medication, because behavioral interventions have the capacity to affect very specific brain circuits in ways that modern medicine does not have. So I'm going to invite you to consider the idea that social and emotional learning can change brain function and actually brain structure, and can produce adaptive emotional and cognitive functioning as a consequence. So for those of you who are not used to looking at brains all the time, I want to just show you a little bit about where these things occur in the brain, what these circuits are, and time does not permit me to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll just tell you a little bit about this. So the upper left here is the ventral surface of the brain, the bottom side of the brain. If you turn the brain upside down, this is what you would see. And the area that's shaded in green here is very important for making emotional judgments about information, deciding whether something is good or bad. And that's called the orbital frontal cortex. Now,
so that piece is really important because that's where you get your kids who overreact to really silly stuff at school that blow up for no reason. That's where they're functioning from. So we're just going to watch about 2 more minutes of this and we'll go through it and we'll finish up from there.
This diagram here, the blue area is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This is an area of the brain that historically has not been considered to be important for emotion, but it's critical, we now know, for certain aspects of emotion, particularly the capacity to guide decision-making through positive emotion. So if a child has a goal to achieve a certain positive outcome and is directing her, his behavior toward the achievement of that goal, we know that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is critical. These areas in this bottom diagram here are areas in lower brain regions, subcortical regions, that play a very important role in emotion as well. And the area shaded in orange, I'll specifically mention in a few minutes, called the amygdala, is a key site, particularly for negative emotions, for detecting threats, and so forth. And this is another important area called the anterior cingulate that's very important in conflict resolution of both cognitive as well as emotional sort.
I'm going to flip forward for a
These
minute.
pie charts here, and I'll give you a definition of what these mean. This is a study that's done with kids, with adolescents, and with adults, all of whom are performing the same kind of working memory task. This is a task where if, for example, I give you a telephone number, and I ask you to remember the telephone number. I'm going to ask you what that number is in just a couple of minutes. This is what working memory is. It's maintaining information in a conscious buffer. And it turns out that the prefrontal cortex is very important for that. And if you look at the area that's shaded in blue in these pie charts, it indicates the amount of the prefrontal cortex that's activated as a child, as an adolescent, and as an adult. Stimulus in a healthy way, we see that there is a decreased response in the amygdala. And so what this simply shows is that using skills that are very similar to those taught in social and emotional learning, and in this case, the training was only 1 hour. These were older adolescents who were being studied in this case. What we see is that they can actually change their brain. The brain changes.
I'm going to flip forward to the summary just because we don't need to watch 20 minutes of this. So I'm going to go through it with you.
We call it a convergence zone for affect and cognition, or thought and feeling. And we also know that negative emotions will interfere with cognitive prefrontal function, that is, with cognitive operations that are occurring in the prefrontal cortex. Social emotional learning is an empirically verified strategy to improve skills of emotion regulation and social adaptation. And as such, social emotional learning.
So I'm going to stop real quick and I'm going to show you guys real quick before I let you go is what's called in your land of teaching. Let me come out of this.
Learning likely produces beneficial changes in the brain.
So if we look up what's called the Mind Up curriculum, this is something that is exactly what he's talking about. So when you are functioning out of the forefront of your brain, that's when kids are constantly ready for fight, flight, or basically what's called, it's called fawn, where they just yes you to death. They'll do anything you say just to make everybody stop and go away. So those are your 3 basic things. But this Mind Up program, I keep getting in the way here. If you look at it, what it does is gives you lessons for creating what's called teaching out. So if this is the forefront of your brain, then all these hand signals and stuff are what you're teaching kids. Like, where are you thinking from right now? So the way you're responding to me, are you in the reasoning part of your brain yet, or are you acting out of emotion? And kids who have been through trauma, and everyone has admitted so far that COVID-19 has been traumatic for children and being out of school. So they're coming back to in-person, or they're, when they get back to in-person, especially, they are acting out. They're having a hard time acclimating. They're having a hard time readjusting. And those who have come from traumatic backgrounds, especially in addition to the COVID, are really acting out. So being prepared for that and understanding how to de-escalate those situations instead of escalating them will really help you with your classroom management and help you create very positive connections with these kids moving forward. So if you want to look up mindup.org, there are sample lessons all on there that you guys can look at about how the brain works, mindful awareness. I actually have curriculum books at my school, so if you're really interested, I can let you look at one of those and see some lessons that are in there. But there's tons of different talks about perspective talking, mindful movement, appreciating happy memories. When you talk about the brain actually looks different for people who are constantly functioning out of the forefront of their mind. So it's something to think about as you move forward, even for yourself, in how you're responding to stress and how you are reacting to it. All right. So again, as we move forward, I'm going to give you, so you got an hour tonight for tonight's session, and it was all about SEL. I will share with you that PowerPoint so you can review it for yourself. There's a bunch of other slides in there that I didn't really feel I need to share with you guys right now and take up all that time, but it had a lot to do with adult, social, emotional, and we're doing a lot of student things right now for kids in elementary and secondary. And then I'm going to share with you what my guidance counselor did for my school for their professional development on the first week of school. So that's another hour. And that's the summary that I was talking about. Just give me a paragraph, like 4 sentences, 5 sentences of just what that was about and what you took from that. And then in addition to that, what I need from you guys is by Monday night to give me 3 topics that you would want to teach an elementary lesson on. It could be health or phys ed. So you get to decide, and it can be an SEL component. It can be whatever you want it to be, but just give me those topics so that when we meet next Wednesday, we can start to look at the objectives and the standards that go with it, so we can start looking at those lesson plans moving forward. Do you guys have any questions for me? Nope. All right. And remember your contract. So when we're done, oh, go ahead, Alana.
I just wanted to make sure, like, everything's gonna be online, like when we teach, or because that's what Professor Beal told us. But
Yeah, you mean like not in person?
yeah.
Yes, everything will be online. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And what I'll do is I'm gonna, when we get closer to that, doing lessons, actually, I'm gonna spend a Wednesday night with you guys teaching you how to do classroom management over Zoom, because that's really important. If you're not comfortable knowing the platform that you're teaching, you're done. Like you can't teach because you're constantly like, how do I, what do I, who do I? So I have a bunch of that too to go over with you guys.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions? So what I'll do is, oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just gonna. I have like a bunch of questions because I wasn't here last week. So if you want to like wait to the end and stay on for a few minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Alana, if you wanted to stay on too, I don't know if you have questions as well. Anybody else have questions for me? You're good.
I
Maria?
guess like as far as our hours, just fill it out on like the appendix sheet for professional development hours, I believe it is.
Yeah, they also sent, did they give you guys the Excel? Sorry, Maria, I didn't mean to cut you off. Say that again.
Go ahead. The Excel sheet. Go ahead. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they also have the Excel one. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well.
Do you see the Excel?
I have the Excel copy of it. So I'm not going to, unless you give it to me, you know what I mean, as a finished document. It's not like,
Gotcha. Okay.
and I didn't try uploading it to Sheets yet, but oftentimes the Excel doesn't transfer over to Sheets in the same type of coding that it does for each box. So I'll try it, but the Sheets on Google, we could share, and then I could see your updates constantly. But Excel, you have to save it and then share it with me. I'm not gonna see it live.
Like type it in through Google for our professional hours. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was just saying you can do it on the log, and that's fine. Yeah,
right.
If you do it on the Excel, it's just gonna count. It's just gonna add the hours for you. But I don't have like live. I can't get in there to see it when you're doing it.
All right.
Like I said, if we had Google Classroom, we could do so much more. So that's why I'm trying to see what this Canvas has, because even if I could upload it and get it to you guys, maybe I'll just do that anyway through an email. That way we can just kind of be on there together, you know, both being working on an Excel. But I'll look at it. Until then, just keep everything on your log. Either way is fine. Just make sure you document it. That's all. Make sure you give me the contract too. I will send an email out after this class with everything that I just talked about, and then remind you of what's still needed. And then so you have that with the presentation that you can log for your hour too. Okay. Any questions? No?
I might as well. I feel like I'm annoying sometimes, but just because we were talking about the HPE meeting about the points.
Yeah.
When we do accomplish a point, or as far as whatever we do as far as goes, that like, do we let you know that, or do we just keep that to ourselves and document it?
Points, you mean like log time, like hours?
No, they were saying how like the HPE club meeting is like worth 3 points. I guess maybe that's something related to graduation.
Yeah, because I sent out the email to HPE, you could log for an hour. Like you could log that time.
Okay, all right, then that's something different. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know anything about points.
All right, then
That's
that's
really
it. Scratch that.
Okay. All right. If something comes up, then tell me. All right. All right, so we're good. So I'll see you guys next Wednesday, and I'll send you an email. Andrew and Alana, you're gonna stay back, and have a good week, guys. If you need anything, let me know. Oh, actually, don't forget to sign up. Did you guys get the Remind information? Don't forget to sign up for the Remind, because that's so easy for me to just send something out real quick on there too. And then that's a really good way to text me or communicate with me. Just send me a message right through Remind, and I'll get right back to you. All right? Because sometimes the emails, they don't come through on my phone, and I have to log in and blah, blah, blah. So it's easier if you need me right away, then go through Remind. All right? All right, guys, I'll see you later. Have a good week.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Bye.
Professor. Have a good night.
You too. All right, I'm going to stop recording because we already did